Today on the Transplant Helper, we're going to be discussing together antibody mediated rejection. As a matter of fact, I'm about to attend an online lecture all about the subject. I thought it'd be a great idea if I just took you with me for a minute, let you understand what's going on, and maybe you can learn a ton. So come on over.
Acute antibody-mediated rejection is usually caused by an anamnestic response due to previous exposure to the alloantigen. Memory B cells rapidly produce high titers of complement-fixing antibodies upon re-exposure. These alloantibodies will bind to the HLA antigens present on the graft endothelium. Multiple mechanisms will now lead to graft damage. Firstly, initiation of the complement cascade will lead to destruction of endothelial cells by the formation of the membrane attack complex.
Hit the subscribe button and click the bell notification to become part of the Transplant Helper community. Hey folks, welcome to the Transplant Helper again today. My name is Jim Merle, and what I let you hear over here just a moment ago, that is actually some of the mess that I oftentimes watch, listen to, and or read to try to help me understand these subjects so I can turn and share them with you. And hopefully today's discussion will be shared in such a way as that we can all understand this together. Today we're talking about antibody mediated rejection. Now, if you've not yet experienced such, you may not actually know what it is, and you're one of the lucky ones. As a matter of fact, about 80% of post-transplant patients experience some form of rejection inside of the first year. Now, there are basically two major types of rejection that you could be involved in. One is acute cellular rejection. I've actually had a program on it before. I'll link it up here in the corners in the description below. You can go back and check that out. That is the most common form of rejection that we might be involved in. However, the second form of rejection you might experience is this antibody mediated rejection, which can be a little bit more severe, can be, difficult to deal with, but nonetheless, we need to understand it, because if we do have to face it, it pays to know what we're talking about. So with that said, what in the world is antibody mediated rejection? It's exactly what it sounds like. It is where the antibodies that are already present in your body basically see your new organ being placed within you, and they put up a fight. Okay, now whether they do that immediately, in a little while, or years down the road, that is basically all it is. It's just your body, its immune system saying, put up your dukes, we're ready to fight, we want to get this done, get out of our body, you don't belong here. Okay, and that's a good thing. We love our immune systems. We especially love it when it's kicking out colds and flus and viruses and all types of diseases that are floating around us that we're exposed to. It's just not quite as fun when you're dealing with an organ that you actually need. In my case, a transplanted heart. For many of you, hearts, lungs, livers, kidneys, pancreas, whatever, you need that organ, and you don't want your body fighting it off. But anyway, it does. It tries to. What is it really all about? Well, basically, when it comes to antibody mediated rejection, there are basically three forms, or you might say even three levels of such rejection that exist. The very first one, which you probably wouldn't even know about if you had it, and I'll explain why, is hyperacute rejection. Now, in hyperacute rejection, it occurs at the moment of transplant. Okay, as a matter of fact, if you back up in history, decades ago, you would find out that when they first started transplanting organs, it was a kidney at that point, they would take those kidneys out of one person, stick them in another. They didn't have any real idea, other than blood type, how to determine if that kidney were a match. And so they would throw the kidney in, then the doctors would basically sew it in, connect the blood vessels, whatever, back away and actually visually watch it for 5 or 10 minutes. And if they saw that organ kind of beginning to change colors, kind of beginning to almost get a dried up look about it, then they knew it was being rejected, and that was called acute rejection, okay, or hyperacute rejection. It meant the organ had to come out, or else the person would die. So they'd immediately pull the organ out. You would try another day. Okay, that's basically all it was. Now, that doesn't occur as often today because doctors and coordinators and OPLs and all, they have such a great understanding of just how these things work together. And so they can really match these organs a lot better than they could 40, 50 years ago. And so they're looking for blood typing, tissue typing, specific antibodies, the HLLs, and all this stuff. They're digging through that, trying to decide if there's going to be a match, so they can prevent hyperacute rejection in most cases. It's still rare. It could happen. There could be a mistake, but in most cases, it is prevented. Now, the second type of rejection right beneath hyperacute rejection would be plain old acute rejection, okay? And as I've said before, there's nothing cute about rejection. I said acute rejection, but acute rejection occurs, generally speaking, inside of that first year. Again, about 80% of patients may experience rejection inside of the first year. It just might be this. And acute rejection occurs basically for the same reason as any other. Your body's trying to fight off the new organ. It's trying to get it out of there, trying to, get it to get up and move to a new house. And as it's doing that, it causes problems. Now, typically, it's just a breakdown of the organ itself. Different things arise. Your antibodies that your body has been building up for years and years and years, it continues to use against the organ. It doesn't necessarily fight the organ for being an organ. It just says something like, hey, I've fought the flu before, and this might be the flu, so it throws something at it, and it tries to fight it off. Now, that's kind of cartoonish, but that's about what happens. It tries to fight this off, and acute rejection can happen generally inside of that first year or so, although it can happen farther and farther out. But anyway, it's generally going to happen, okay? Now, once it happens, acute rejection, they may define it for you in a few different levels. They may say that you have an R0, an R1, an R2, or an R3. Now, R0 is just what it sounds like. Rejection numero uno. No rejection whatsoever. No signs, no cells, no problem, okay? And I've been an R0 many times. Again, I've been very blessed to this point, 6 years out, but an R0. Now, an R1, a lot of transplant centers don't even really define that as true rejection. And R1 says there is a little bit of a cellular change there. There's a little bit of something to see that they see on what they call the stains or during the biopsies and such. They see some rejection, but oftentimes an R1 is seen as a good sign because they say you're not really having rejection that's damaging the organ. However, there is proof that your immune system is working. And so your immune system is working. It recognizes the organ. It sees it's there. It kind of wants to get at it, but it hasn't hurt anything, okay? And many people live in R1 for years and years and years. No big deal. Now, when you move up the scale a little bit to, say, an R2, now at an R2 level, that's when treatment comes in. That's when the doctors are going to look at you and say, look, we're kind of afraid. We did your biopsy, you had this rejection of an R2, and they start increasing things like your prednisone, that corticosteroid you hate, the devil's drug. They start increasing prednisone, and they do that because that's just one of the main drugs that very simply and easily can help to prevent that rejection or kind of beat it back. And oftentimes it's just an increase in the prednisone for a while, maybe a change in some of your other drugs. You may be on Prograf or tacrolimus, it's also known as sirolimus, myfortic, mycophenolate, several different drugs. They may change the levels a bit, make some adjustments, and boom, you could be right back down to an R1, no sweat, no worries. So R2 rejection, when it concerns this antibody mediated rejection, problematic, may cause you to have some, again, some medication increases, maybe no big deal. Now, if that persists, however, maybe you have a biopsy 1 week and you're an R2, next week you're an R2, maybe another week you're an R2. Now they're going to turn around and say, this is worse than we thought, and they might start throwing things at you like IVIG. And I'm not going to go into IVIG here. It's immunoglobulin, I don't remember how to say it, but I've got a video. I'll link it up here and in the description below. You can check out IVIG. IVIG plasmapheresis. I can't say that either. Check out that video. It'll help you to have some understanding how they can treat this as well. And again, that's if you're a continuous or sustained R2. Now, if you're an R3, they're going to pull out all the big guns. You're going in the hospital. You're staying in the hospital. They're going to throw all these treatments at you, including IVIG, plasmapheresis, several other medications they can give IV, as well as just, injection type stuff. They're really going to watch this closely. And if it's not managed immediately, there can be a definite problem, okay? So the key with rejection is to being sure it's found early. And because a lot of times rejection is asymptomatic, meaning there's really no symptoms that you feel, that's why you need to constantly be going in for your blood work, for your tests, for your biopsies, being sure that they're keeping up with your case very well. So we have hyperacute rejection, acute rejection. Now the last one here, chronic rejection. This is all a part of the antibody mediated rejection. Chronic rejection Very similar to the preceding two. However, this one occurs on the long haul, okay? I said I'm very blessed because I haven't experienced rejection yet. I'm basically 6 years out. Yeah, that's all good, but I shouldn't get too brave or too confident here because I can easily fall to chronic rejection in the end. Now, this generally occurs outside of the first year, past that first year, that second, third, fourth, fifth year, whenever this can occur. As a matter of fact, I knew a good friend several months ago. I think she was 13 years out and experienced chronic rejection for the first time, so it can happen. But nonetheless, chronic rejection is very similar to the other two, but really this occurs in that the same antibodies have been attacking, but they've gone unnoticed or they've gone unchecked, and now it's done damage to the organ. Big damage to the organ. Not necessarily, unget-overable, but bigger damage to the organ nonetheless. And that's basically because as it attacks, a lot of times it'll get to the blood vessels, the connections that come into that organ, whether it's the heart, the kidney, whatever. These blood vessels that attach that organ and supply blood flow to them, it gets into the walls of those vessels and thickens them, therefore restricting the amount of actual good oxygenated blood flow that goes through. And before you know it, the pieces or parts of the organ began to die out, okay? Just like a heart attack. A heart attack is nothing more than a restriction of blood flow. They call it ischemia, but a restriction of blood flow going to a certain part of the heart, and it causes that part of the muscle to die, okay? Don't want that to happen, but chronic rejection can actually cause that, okay? So you got to watch out for chronic rejection. That just means that, me sitting back in my easy chair rocking around, I've never had rejection. Well, be careful. It's possible that I could have. So we got 3 types of rejection here. Hyperacute, again, occurs in the operating room. Hardly ever would know it. Rarely happens anymore. Acute, very common among many of us. And then chronic can be that long-term thing. So never get too excited or too proud of yourself for your accomplishment because, yes, you've been blessed, okay? You've been lucky, whatever you want to say. But nonetheless, just always be cautious and watch out for rejection. Now, immediately someone says, Jim, what are the signs of rejection? Well, it could be something like a burning, a fever at the site, like you might say right here underneath, above my heart. There I have. It could be fevers, it could be fatigue, it could be, many times it is just symptoms that are basically just like the failure he had before. That can be a sign of rejection. But again, the problem is many times you're asymptomatic, no signs, so blood test, biopsies, that sort of thing, constant testing is always important. Now, I don't know that I've solved all the mystery, but I promise you I heard a whole lot more in this little video a while ago that I can't share, okay? I'm not smart enough to turn around and share with you, but I hope this has helped out in some way. Now, that is antibody mediated rejection. We'll come back later again and talk about acute cellular rejection, just a little bit different, same idea, same problems, but nonetheless, hopefully you can get some results from this. Go see your doctor if you feel like you're having any of these problems. Have them to be aggressive, okay? That's why so many times I get so aggravated when I find teams that are not aggressive, that don't just jump on matters when they occur, because this is one of those things that can't not be let to go on for very long. Thank you so much for joining me today. If this video has helped you out in any way, a big thumbs up would be great. Like the video, consider sharing it out with your friends, and as always, start checking out the screen here beside me. Oftentimes you'll see other videos that are related or other videos that you can watch that hopefully will continue to give you some insight into the transplant life. As a matter of fact, right now I've got 370 videos all related to transplant, and they're here for your taking. Thank you so much for joining me today. I love each of you, and until next time, stay stronger, friends.